the Candidates Forum at ICN. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. This is the first time we're doing a Zoom version of the Candidates Forum, so there's benefits to that. And well, you can all show up without having to leave your home. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the candidates. It's such an important year, such an important election, and we're excited to really dig into the issues and reintroduce ourselves to the candidates and have the candidates reintroduce their policy issues to us. Before I begin, I'd like to say that I am representing ICN as the moderator, and I'm also representing the partner for this forum, the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, in which I serve as Director of Advocacy and Policy for the organization. So I'm excited to hear from our policymakers and wanting to engage them at a deeper level. First, we are going to start off by the recitation of the Quran, and then we'll continue with the program.
Assalamualaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ar-Rahman 'allama al-Qur'an, khalaqa al-insan, 'allamahu al-bayan, ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bihusban, wan-najmu wash-shajaru yasjudan, was-samaa'a wa rafa'aha wa wada'a al-mizan, alla tatghaw fil mizan. وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. Allah the Most Gracious, it is He who has taught the Quran. He has created man. He has taught him speech and intelligence. The sun and the moon follow courses exactly computed, and the herbs and the trees, both alike prostrate in adoration. And the firmament has He raised high, and He has set up the balance of justice, in order that you may not transgress due balance. So establish weight with justice and fall not short in the balance. It is He who has spread out the earth for His creatures. Therein is fruit and date palms producing space. Also corn with its leaves and stalk for fodder and sweet-smelling plants. Then, which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? He created man from sounding clay like unto pottery, and He created jinns from fire, free of smoke. Then, which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite somebody to introduce ICN, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful, my name is Kashif Fakhruddin. I'm the president of Islamic Center of Naperville. We welcome all the guests this evening. This has been a great program that ICN has been doing for the last several years, Meet the Candidates. This event allows us, our community, to know the candidates. At the same time, it gives the opportunity for the candidates to share their sincere thoughts, their vision with our community members, what they're planning for their city, state, and our country. We thank, and I thank personally to the ICN board, the Civic Engagement Committee, and this year we have been partnering with the Illinois Muslim Coalition and CIGC to be part of this Meet the Candidate event. ICN is one of the largest Islamic center in Chicagoland. We have 3 locations. We serve approximately around 12,000 people, and 4th center has been planned. In this time of pandemic, ICN has been serving our community members we have several initiatives that we have launched. We hope and pray that this pandemic will end soon. And again, this tonight's event is very important. As Mr. Maria has mentioned, we really thank all the candidates for taking their time to be here tonight with us. Thank for the ICN community in the surrounding suburbs, the individuals who have joined us for this event. So with that being said, again, welcome you all. I hope and pray that everyone's time will be well served and it will be a very successful event again tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. To be very disciplined on time, I want to tell everybody that is joining us that there are two elected officials and candidates that have to leave early. So we are going to actually introduce them to you now, and there will be a Q&A for them right after. I'd like to say to both of you before I introduce you that you'll have about 2 to 3 minutes to speak and present a little bit about your policies and a little bit about yourself, obviously. Not enough time, but then we'll go into the Q&A. And I'll start off with introducing Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. I think we have a slide for you. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from the 14th District, please.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you all this evening. I'm Lauren Underwood. I live in Naperville, and it's the honor of my life to be able to represent our community, the Illinois 14th Congressional District in Congress. When I was elected in 2018, I pledged to our constituents that I'd be the most accessible, transparent, and accountable Congresswoman that this community has ever had. I held 15 town halls in 2019, another dozen this year, and I see my role as carrying the voices and values of Northern Illinois to Congress. My team and I set up 9 constituent advisory councils on issues from agriculture to small business to veteran services to make sure that I'm doing just that. And in partnership with our constituents, I passed more than a dozen pieces of legislation through the House. President Trump signed 3 pieces of my legislation into law, including the Lower Insulin Costs Now Act, which will make generic insulin available more quickly for families. And during my first campaign, I heard from numerous families in our community who were struggling to pay for insulin. So I'm really proud that we were able to make a difference for them. I'm a registered nurse, so healthcare affordability remains a big focus of mine, particularly as we face COVID-19. The Senate just passed another one of my bills, the Veteran Care Quality Transparency Act. And so it's waiting for the president's signature. And so it could be enacted into law any day now to ensure that our veterans receive high quality mental health care and suicide prevention services. My priority right now is keeping our community safe during the coronavirus pandemic and ensuring a robust economic recovery. I really enjoyed the opportunities to work with ICN in a variety of capacities and looking forward to your questions this afternoon. Thank you. I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Now I'll introduce, if we could have the slide back, Congressman Bill Foster from the 11th District.
Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone from the ICN. You know, this has been rather challenging a couple years here. Well, almost 4 years now. You know, Trump's presidency started. One of his first acts was the Muslim ban, which we fought in the court as strongly as we could, and we've done everything we can in Congress, given the composition of the Senate, to try to limit and take it back. We're now within months, hopefully 4 months of getting a president who won't have the same attitudes toward, you know, not just Muslim communities, but immigrant communities of all kinds. You know, this seems almost surreal to me. I spent 25 years of my life working at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory as a scientist. And if you go on to the site at Fermilab, the very first thing you see is an array of flags from all of the scientific collaborators from all over the country, from all over the world, you know, many of them Islamic. And when my kids went to the Fermilab daycare, you know, there were all different languages spoken, and it just it seems unnatural. I'm very proud at of the diversity in Naperville itself. I'm Naperville's other member of Congress, but what you do at the ICN really represents the very best of Naperville and very best of the United States. And I'm proud every time, there's been something important to talk about. You've been part of that conversation. And not everything that's happened in the last 4 years have been good. And it's very important that our community comes together and talks things through and makes sure that we stand up and say the bad things that we've seen nationally are not who we are here in Naperville. Anyway, happy to answer any of the questions. You can ask me about science. You can ask me about the financial services and when we're going to have the next financial crisis, or the Coronavirus Oversight Committee, which is the thing that's been taking so much of my time.
Thank you so much, Congressman. So I'm going to start out with one of the most pressing issues right now, and which is the coronavirus. As you know, majority of the individuals that are impacted in large numbers from the coronavirus fall largely in the community, including minorities. And my question specifically is, as far as Congressman Foster, and then I will turn to Congressman Underwood for your expertise. As far as your work in the Oversight Committee, how are you addressing the population in those communities as it responds to the virus?
Yeah, well, the most important single thing we can do to get out from under this situation is get a vaccine demonstrated scientifically to be safe and accepted, and then get that deployed in all of the communities. It's going to be most important to make sure that those who are most at risk, the elderly, the first responders, and the minority communities who are statistically much more likely to suffer from this, that they get not only the vaccines, but the therapeutics. President Trump, because of his medical condition, just took a very advanced monoclonal antibody therapeutic. That is not generally available to the public, and because the manufacturing capability for that is such that it will be very scarce. It is believed that drugs like that are going to be very effective, and we have to make sure that when we have to allocate important life-saving medicines, that these are done with an understanding of who's really most at risk. And it's something we've been very engaged in and had long discussions in the committee. And I have to say, I'm also proud of the scientific community. The National Academy of Science and Medicine has initiated and just completed a study of how to fairly distribute the vaccines to the first populations. And there's a lot to be, I could talk all afternoon on this, but it's really important.
Thank you so much. Congresswoman Underwood, I know that healthcare is a big passion of yours, and so is confronting mental health. I wanted to know, as far as your legislation regarding mental health, obviously concentrating on the veterans, what steps are you taking to address mental health issues that are arising from the coronavirus, number one, which also includes domestic violence? And number two, as far as mental health, illness, and in addition to how it plays out in interactions with the police.
Okay. Well, with just the availability of mental health services, I introduced a piece of legislation, the Primary and Behavioral Healthcare Access Act, which would allow the American people to get 3 primary care visits and 3 mental health care visits or behavioral health visits without a copayment, deductible related fee or co-insurance, anything like that, in an effort to get folks into providers. And that's for folks with private insurance or on the marketplace, with the idea that if we can remove cost as a barrier to entry, right, going in and trying to build a rapport with a therapist or a provider or a counselor or a social worker or a psychiatrist, whoever you need, then they're more likely to get into treatment. Now, that's a little different than the approach on the veteran side. So I'm happy to take that if that's the nature of your question. But I think just more broadly, we know that during this time of COVID-19, this is tough. We are in a pandemic. There is a lot of trauma. So many families are facing financial distress. And oftentimes people are feeling isolated because their usual coping strategies, whether it's being outdoors or being with a lot of people or in social settings, or their closest networks of friends and families, they're having to remain socially distanced from. And so people are really having a hard time. We're seeing an increased rates of domestic violence, as you mentioned, increased overdose rates, increased suicide rates, and all the rest. We need folks to be able to get access to the therapists and counselors that they need, and cost should not be a barrier, especially during a pandemic. I think where we've succeeded is expanding the telehealth capabilities. And so, in suburban communities like ours, where we do have the high-speed internet access, folks are being able to take advantage of those, but it remains kind of a gap in the western part of my district into DeKalb County, Western Kane, and McHenry, where we don't have reliable broadband access. And so that remains a priority as we move forward. With respect to policing, I am a strong advocate for policing reform, and that's why we passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. In our community, we can look at the city of Aurora that doesn't have body cams. Will County Sheriff doesn't have body cams. McHenry County Sheriff doesn't have body cams. Kane County Sheriff is getting body cams this month, right? We talk about these issues as if it happens to somebody else, but we know that we need reform even here, even in Naperville, even in our community. And so, this piece of legislation would require body cams. It would extend the opportunity for people to know that lethal force would be used as a last resort. There's increased transparency and accountability just to reinforce this bond between police and the communities that they serve. And I recognize that if someone is in a mental health crisis, calling the police for a criminal response is not the most effective way to approach an illness or an addiction or mental health concern. And so it's important to make sure that we have robust resources in our community to address mental health as a healthcare issue and not a criminal issue. And I think that policing reform, in addition to these healthcare reforms, will help put us on that path.
Thank you. Thank you. Congressman Foster, as you know, a bill passed in the House, the No Muslim Ban Ever, which is, being celebrated by the community and across the country. But of course, we know where it really gets stuck is the Senate. And we want to know, as your role in representing such a diverse community as a congressman, what would you be doing to make sure that the issue is highlighted, and that you are taking steps to make sure that the Muslim ban in any capacity does not stand in the future or now?
Yeah, well, you're correct that the Senate is the problem on this, and actually, frankly, the president right now. And the real answer to that lies in getting people to the polls and getting the message out so that they know who to vote for. This is, there have been waves of tolerance and intolerance in our country's history. And unfortunately, I think we're suffering through a wave of intolerance by part of the population. And when that happens, the only correct answer is to have, frankly, the decent people in the United States of America stand up, explain why it's important to go to the polls and do so. And, this is not the time for any segment of the population to stand back and just assume that someone else will operate the levers of our democracy. What I hope we see in the end of January and the inauguration of a better Senate and a new president is that the lesson that the world will take from this is that this is how a democracy repairs itself when it's threatened by autocracy, threatened by intolerance, and all the bad things that can happen to any government. I hope that the United States takes a little bit of humility from what I hope to be the near miss with really bad turn for our government here, and it will be the work of the next generations, starting with Lauren, to actually bind up the wounds and put our country on a better and permanently on a better track.
Thank you so much. And the final question I'm going to ask Congresswoman Underwood. We touch a little bit about immigration when we talk about Muslim ban, but we want to talk about specifically, since you have a passion for healthcare, is healthcare concerns in detention centers, family separation, and the role of ICE, and what strong stance will you be taking on those matters, specifically because the presumption is that the district you serve, that this, and it may be a false presumption, that this is not an issue for the majority of your constituents.
Thanks for that question. So I serve as the vice chair on the House Homeland Security Committee. And so we have some jurisdiction over what goes on at the U.S.-Mexico border, specifically U.S. Border Patrol and some aspects of Customs and Border Protection. And so I've traveled down to the U.S.-Mexico border 3 times during this term. And on my very first visit, I was stunned to see the way that the healthcare providers were assessing individuals. So this is in the backdrop of, over the course of 2019, several children dying while in federal custody of preventable illnesses. They would be writing information about healthcare status on a little scrap of paper no bigger than a Post-it note, as if that scrap of paper with medication that the person may have or current medical status, whether they just had a procedure, anything like that, was supposed to keep up with that individual as they were being transferred from facility to facility. And so as a result, we've seen some catastrophic conditions, obviously, but also impacts, right? People dying, losing their lives. And so I wrote a piece of legislation, the U.S. Border Patrol and Medical Screening Standards Act, which passed the House on a bipartisan vote in 2019. And President Trump signed an aspect of that into law at the end of 2019, which funds an interoperable electronic health record, so that no longer would they be charting on little scraps of paper, that they would not be losing track of individuals. And this might seem like a small solution, but I promise you, I met a woman who had just delivered a baby, was sitting in the cages with her American citizen born baby, right? Like US born baby. She was bleeding out and the guards had no idea that she was like 2 or 3 days postpartum and needed medical attention, right? That should never happen in the United States at this moment, and certainly while folks are in custody. And so obviously there are many, many, many reforms that are needed. Just this week, we voted on a resolution to condemn what's going on with ICE and these forced hysterectomies and reproductive healthcare violations, right? Examinations, procedures, organ removals, et cetera, that should never, ever, ever happen. So I think that hopefully with a strong vote over the course of the next month, we will elect a new president, we will elect a new Senate, and we will grow this majority in the House, and we will be able to correct what has gone on in this immigration system that has been so damaging and just runs counter to our values as the American people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your powerful words. I would like to give each of you 1 minute to conclude before you depart. So Congressman Foster?
I just want to thank you for getting involved in our electoral system. It is important for the functioning of our democracy to have everyone's voices heard. And when you have a diverse community, almost everyone is a minority. I think within not long, I think the Illinois 11th district is going to be a significant, I being an old white guy, are in the minority. And so it's very healthy. And we have to make sure that at all levels of government that we see the diversity that is the reality of the Illinois 11th district be reflected in the elected officials. So you don't necessarily have to do this wonderful thing like Lauren did and just say, the heck with it, I'm running for Congress. You can make a big difference running for Forest Preserve, running for city council, running for mayor. I think sometimes when I'm frustrated with how slowly Washington moves, I think maybe being mayor is the most satisfactory level of government, because you get to actually get your hands on individual projects and see them to completion. But all levels are important and all voices are important. So thank you. What you're doing here is a perfect example of what should happen every day and every election in our country.
Thank you. Congresswoman?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a real treat to be able to be with our friends at ICN again. And obviously, it's an honor to represent Naperville with Congressman Foster and Sean Casten, who's not with us today. So listen, we have a lot of work to do. And I would invite you to join our campaign. You can visit Underwood for Congress. It's forcongress.com for more information on how to get involved. And early voting's already started. So the 95th Street Library in the Will County portion of Naperville that I represent is our local Dropbox location, and would invite you to request your ballot by mail, fill it out right away, and drop it off. I'm gonna be dropping mine off on Monday, so I'll see you there.
Perfect.
We can't miss this opportunity to vote.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to bring in the rest of the candidates now. I'm going to wait for the first slide. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I'd like to introduce to you Meg, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Meg Loughran Capel?
It's Loughran. It's
Loughran.
Yeah, Loughran.
Okay, great. Thank you. Meg Loughran Capel, running for the 49th district in the Illinois State Senate. And I'll ask you, just like I did with the other candidates, to say a few words, about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll introduce the other candidates, and then we'll open up for a Q&A.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me on, and it's just my pleasure to be here and answer any questions, and have the ICN and all your followers through Facebook get to know me a little bit better. So thank you again for having me on. So as you stated, I'm running for the 49th Senate District. I am, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a special education teacher. I've taught for 15 years. I took 9 years off in the middle to raise my 3 children. So I am a mom. My youngest is 18. We're almost done with getting him on to college. So I'm almost there in terms of getting him into being an empty nester. Education's always been very important to me. Even when I was home with my children, I was very involved in the public school system, very involved with their programs, fundraising, doing what I could to support our community schools, because it was very important to me to make sure that I was a part of it and I had a voice there, but also just to support our communities through the schools. So then I went back into teaching, and I was a special education teacher, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and I would go in and out of classrooms. I worked with a lot of teachers, a lot of families with students with special needs, and administrators, just all sorts of people, just trying to create a better and more equitable environment for, my students. In 2017, the opportunity arose for me to run for school board in the Joliet area through Joliet Township High School, which encompasses not just Joliet, but we have Shorewood, pieces of Shanahan, Elwood. It's a pretty big township, so it's a pretty big district there. And I won that in 2017 because, again, I think it was important for me to have a voice at the table with my experiences to make sure that our students were getting exactly what they need, that parents, had input, that I could be an advocate for parents, and also, making sure that our staff and our teachers were, well represented as well. And then another thing about me is I am a small business owner. My husband and I opened up a business about 1.5 years ago so that we could bring in some extra income, because he is a teacher as well. So we are now small business owners for about 1.5 years. So I think when you look at the 49th district, I think I'm a pretty good fit, and I offer a lot of different perspectives and a variety of ideas from all my types of experiences that I've had throughout my life to be a good representative and a good advocate for our community. We have dozens of public education institutions in the district, and I know that our Senator Jennifer Bertino-Tarrant was a very strong advocate for education. So again, I'd like to continue working with that. And it's not even just academics, just like Congresswoman Underwood talked about, we have social emotional issues in our schools that we need to really take seriously. We have a teacher shortage. I mean, we're not going to have good schools if we don't have teachers to be in there and help. So those are some issues with education, and just ensuring that evidence-based funding equitably funds all the schools across our state. I worked on the east side of Joliet. It was an under-resourced school, and I saw how difficult it was for my families that didn't have all of the resources to give their kids what they needed, basic necessities. Not all were like that, but there were some, and that's very difficult for a student to have to be able to learn coming from that. So it's important to me to equitably fund our educational system. And with that, hopefully that will eventually, as we put more money into our schools from the state, we can bring down our property taxes or our property taxes. So I was a union representative, so I really want to protect our pensions and workers' rights, and definitely fighting, again, just because of my experiences as a teacher and seeing how difficult it can be to have access to quality healthcare. It's important to fight for access for that and affordable quality healthcare. So again, thank you for having me on. I can't hear.
I got you. Okay. Thank you so much. And we'll wait for the rest of the candidates to do the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now I'll introduce candidates for Illinois State Representatives. Perfect. If we can have, excellent. I'd like to introduce Mark Batnick, if that is a correct pronunciation.
Batnick.
Batnick, thank you. Running for state representative for the 97th district. 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Well, I really want to get to the question, so I'll try to keep it under that 2 to 3 minutes. My name's Mark Batnick. I've been serving in the Illinois House since 2015, and I'm married. My wife is a special education teacher as well. I'm a small business person. I've been self-employed my entire adult life, and we have 5 children. And I can give a bunch of tangential reasons on why I ran for office, but it really comes back to family. I've seen so many people moving out of state. My oldest daughter went to school out of state. My second child, my son, went to school out of state. My oldest daughter just moved to Arizona. And as a small business owner, I saw a lot of my clients leaving the area. And it was really, the root cause was a lot of things that are happening at the state level that need to be addressed. Some of those things are starting to be addressed, but some of those things have actually gone in the other way and become worse. So certainly focusing on the fiscal issues and the corruption issues that we have in the state has been an issue. The other thing I want to touch upon, in case we don't get to it in our Q&A, is just the whole COVID situation. Kind of is an example of what my approach to Springfield is. I always look at myself as a problem solver. And when COVID hit, there were a couple of things that I did right away. The first one is, even before schools were closed, I recognized that there were vulnerable people that needed to be self-isolated. And, my parents, my dad has a heart issue. My mother has COPD. And I called my mom up very early on in mid-March of the pandemic. And I said, you guys are not going out. We are going to you guys are going to self-quarantine. Dave and I are going to drop off your groceries and everything you need at your doorstep and until we figure this out. And when I hung up the phone that Thursday night, I sat back and I realized there is no government program to handle this. And it's just up to people to step up and solve the problem. So that very next morning, I got my staff together and we launched a Helping Hands program throughout the district. We recruited dozens of volunteers through Facebook. We reached out to senior citizens and anybody else that needed help via texting, robocalls, Facebook, newspaper, press releases, everything we could. And we started this program to keep seniors self-isolated. In terms of, I know that Congresswoman Underwood talked about, the increase in suicides, overdoses, and domestic violence. I wrote a letter about that in mid-April to the governor, once again, trying to be solution orientated. There's things that you can do during a pandemic for 2 weeks, for 2 months that you can't do for 2 years. And we're seeing an increase in some of these negative side effects of the lockdown. And it's one of the reasons why I was the first state official to push for the use of masks, because we had to find a way to get more of the economy open and get everybody out and about. And I'm proud of that. Time is, I got a lot of pushback from my own party, but I think time has proven me out that the wearing of the mask was the right thing to do. I was praised by the governor for my response, both on masks, but also on my programs. I'm a Republican, the governor is a Democrat, but we need to put aside the bickering and we need to work together to solve problems. And I actually have examples of doing that. So I really appreciate the ICN having me for this election. And I look forward to your questions that I will be answering soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Janet Yang Rohr. Yang Rohr, please let me know if I'm introducing you correctly and pronouncing that correctly. Running for Illinois State Representative for the 41st District. We'd like you to speak for 2 to 3 minutes, and after everyone is done is when we'll open up for Q&A.
Thank you. Yeah, you pronounced it perfectly. And thank you so much for having us and for doing this such important work, and for everyone who took the time to spend their Saturday night watching this. Thank you as well. I'm Janet Yang Rohr. I'm running for state representative in the 41st District, and this is a community where my husband and I both grew up. We went to high school, all the way from elementary to high school here, and then we're now raising our 3 kids here, where in the same school district where I'm also a school board member and a member of the Naperville 203 school board. So after I graduated from Naperville North, I went to Northwestern University and I got my BA in English and economics. And then I went to the University of Chicago to get my MBA. And I'm also a chartered financial analyst, CFA charter holder. I've been in the investment industry for most of the last 2 decades, and I am right now the global director of data at Morningstar. And so my job really is to make sure that we're standing up for savers, for retirees, and to make sure that working men and women have the tools and the information that they need to retire with dignity. And so now I'm running for state representative because very simply, I just want to make sure that our community's values and our priorities are represented in Springfield. There's so much potential for things that we can do to move forward, like making sure that everyone has access to quality education, that we all have access to affordable health care and good working conditions. And as I and our volunteers have talked with thousands of community members in the 41st District, it is so clear that there are so many things that most of us all care deeply about, and these are the things that I think those watching also care about, these issues of women's rights and healthcare and workers' rights. There's been no more time than now, I think, when these issues have come into such sharp focus and such sharp relief, as these past few weeks, where we've seen the very unfortunate passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because now at this point we have a Senate Majority Leader who it looks like will be successful at ramming through a Trump Supreme Court nominee. And I think we all understand just how hypocritical that is and how unfair it is. But I'm here to, and I think a lot of us are here to really make sure this group understands that we do not have to sit back. We don't have to sit back and take this. Whatever happens at the national level, we can protect women's reproductive health rights in Illinois. We can protect access to good health care. We can stand up for immigrants' rights here in Illinois. And a Trump-dominated Supreme Court will make the states decide on many of these issues. The current representative of the 41st district, he has shown where he stands on a lot of these issues, and we could not be more like diametrically opposed on many of these, such as women's reproductive health rights, such as protecting us from health insurance companies kicking people off for pre-existing conditions. In the many conversations that we've had, that I've had with the community, I understand. I think we all understand that this is not what our community wants. Our community wants to protect the most vulnerable among us, and we need to hold our leaders to be accountable, to represent us and delivering those results that we want, and delivering on the values that matter to us. So I am respectfully asking for the vote from this community to do just that, and I look forward to answering questions and hearing about what matters to this group too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have one more slide? I think that we do have one more slide. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Grant Worley, running for Illinois State Representative for the 41st District. Can you hear me, Mr. Worley?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And even though you're not on video, obviously you're welcome to speak, and we would love to hear from you. So if you could just take 2 to 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, I appreciate you inviting me here. It's great to be with my friends at ICN. My apologies for not having the video working. I consider myself tech savvy, but for the life of me cannot figure out why my video is not working. My name is Grant Worley. I'm the current state representative for the 41st District. I am born and raised in Naperville. I am happily married to my wife, Sharon, for 28 years, and we're raising a family here in Naperville. Our oldest son is 23, and our youngest is 16, and he's a junior at Naperville Central. I am working on your behalf down in Springfield because I want to take the values of Naperville down to Springfield, and that's something that I have done for the last 6 years. The issues that I am working on that are important to me because they're important to you, first and foremost, education. The best thing that we can do for our children in our community is provide opportunities for great education. I'm proud to have supported the funding formula redo so we can make sure that those that need the dollars the most for education from the state level are getting them, and we're making sure that the rising tide lifts all boats. Another issue that's important to me because it's important to you is that we have sound fiscal management in the state of Illinois. This current budget right now that I could not support because it's a $2 billion spend more than last year, and it requires $6 billion of borrowing from the federal government. We're literally paying current day-to-day operations of state government on the credit card. We need to bring sound fiscal management back to the state of Illinois. And as a former small business owner, I consider myself to be well-versed in the ability to do that. One of the issues that we're hearing almost on a daily basis in the news is corruption in state government. Between myself and Representative Mark Batnick, we have been leading the charge on rooting out bad actors in state government. We all want the best government that's trustworthy. And right now in Springfield, with Speaker Mike Madigan, we have corruption running rampant. There are federal indictments almost on a daily basis now. Something a little bit more close to home is I've been working closely with Edward Hospital, our first responders, and those that are taking care of our elderly and others in assisted living facilities and nursing homes is the COVID response, whether that's getting personal protection equipment there, making sure that testing's available, making sure that actual dollars are flowing to some of these facilities so that we can make sure that the most vulnerable amongst us are protected. It's great to be with my friends at ICN. I believe I was on city council when you made a couple of building expansions, and I was glad to partner with you and support those to bring even greater diversity to a community that we all love. I look forward to the questions, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move into a few announcements, and closing remarks in general before we enter into the Q&A. First of all, I'd like to say that the fact that we have individuals listening tonight, Saturday night, even if it's for 40 minutes, for an hour, it's so significant to the point where you will get so much information from these candidates that you can take to the ballot. Again, as we started tonight, we stated that this is one of the most important elections in this country. And it is not going to have any impact if people don't get out and vote. And that's what we want to highlight again and again, that discussing things with candidates, hearing candidates, gives you the ability to make an educated vote. And everything really changes once you cast your ballot. I'd like to now, if we could get to the next slide, please. Great. So as the candidates had stated, we have a call to action before we even get questions, and that is vote, vote, vote. Early voting is in progress. There's going to be a link on the chat that actually is a link from the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition that is an aid for people who need help to register to vote. And that will basically give them information if you need any assistance in the process. We want to make sure that you also understand that voting, even though there has been a lot of information about the mail vote and how it's difficult to register and the drop where the drop boxes are, and people are wondering if this is all going to actually work. The only way it can function substantively working is that if you take your ballots, fill them out, and drop them off. And so doubting the process is not going to help us. Complaining about the process is not going to help us right now. The only thing that's going to help is when you register to vote and then you drop off your ballot. Next slide, please, because I believe that there's more information about the drop-off boxes as well. Perfect. So these are very significant dates. October 19th to November 2nd. The 75th Street Masjid is very convenient. I'm going to read it to you. Don't miss this chance to drop off your ballot. Starting from September 21st, so it's already started, till November 2nd, DuPage Fairgrounds. Vote early, vote early, vote early. We can't even stress it enough. Again, look at the link from the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition that will help as far as if you have any questions with registration. Masjids and faith centers are partisan centers. So what that means is that they're there to help you get out the vote. So again, I'm going to urge anybody that has questions to please reach out to them. I'm going to read out the website for information, icnmasjid.org/vote. If there's any questions, please make yourself, make sure that you understand that people are accessible and they're there to answer your questions. Now, if we can go on to the next slide, please. All right, so perfect. Before we go into the Q&A, I want the community members to know that there are actually significant bills that have been introduced into the Illinois General Assembly that the Muslim community will be impacted by. And the reason why we're sharing these bill numbers is because these bills cannot pass without your support. So I would like you to take this time to just look at the screen. If you want to take your phone and take a screenshot of this, that would be great as well. If you want to write it down, that's good as well. HB 5752 is the modest uniform bill, and that bill allows student athletes to dress modestly and still be part of athletic sport teams without being penalized. SB 2363 is the Muslim curriculum bill. That actually introduces the contributions of Muslim Americans and Muslims to the United States. We strongly believe that education and teaching individuals in schools about different cultures and faiths actually results in a better relationship between communities and erodes hate and ignorance. So we want to start that early. Again, that's SB 2363. And the reason why we're stating these bill numbers is that we want you to know that right now veto session will start in November. And what we want all of you to give the message to these representatives and senators that have sponsored these bills for the community is that you support them, you appreciate them, and in addition to that, you're watching them and that you believe in the connection between your vote and the policies that you want to see impact your families and communities. Next slide, please. Two more bills, SB 2361, bias-based bullying. And this basically provides the ability for schools to have mediation when there are bullying incidents that happen on campus resulting from complaints, hateful words, anything that is in the category against religion, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation. And we again feel that intervening in which two parties actually communicate and talk through for education purposes is a way to go instead of just reprimanding when it comes to bullying. SJRCA 22 is very, very significant. As you know, it's the amendment to the oath of office. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that anyone that wins an election and represents any type of office in the state of Illinois has to include in their oath of office that they respect the great diversity of this great state of Illinois. And this is so we can really, really make sure that the elected representatives and then elected officials eventually will understand the power of their words and their dedication to their diversity as it relates to their oath once they win. So please be mindful of those bill numbers. We'd like you to contact these senators and representatives. Like I said, veto session is about to start, and just thank them and support them. Census, census, census. Okay, well, first let's do the call to action, which we had stated that we want to specifically be able to reach out to them. Here's a sample paragraph for you. If you want to send an email to these legislators, very simple. Thank you for sponsoring Bill XXS. As members of the Muslim community and residents, we're excited to see the passage of the bill. Very simple. This is just a sample. You can write what you'd like, but just know that they read these emails, they're looking for these emails, and they appreciate them, and that they know that there's an active, vibrant community. Census is live, www.2020census.gov. Again, you've been hearing about census for the last year. We can't stress enough that the census is needed now more than ever, and it's critical to our community. If we don't make ourselves community members that count, then we don't get services that our communities desperately need. Man, woman, child, undocumented, students, everyone counts. Again, online, 2020census.gov. It takes literally 2 minutes. Just go in and fill it out so you can be involved in counting. And then you can also call 844-330-2020. These are all civic responsibilities that community members really, really need to take on. And I would encourage, as community members of faith, it is within our dean to participate and help the community and help each other. And these are so vital. Call your senators and representatives, support these bills that help your communities. Go out and vote, make use of early voting, and then please, please fill out the census. Next slide. I'd like to thank ICN Civic Partners who have made tonight very successful and have put this whole event together. I'd like to thank the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition that is leading the work on civic power and organizing and lobbying efforts and creating a voice for Muslims in the state of Illinois, the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago, and obviously the ICN Political Engagement Committee that has done tremendous work for so many years. And I'd like to state and remind everybody the reason why legislators are so responsive is because there's such good engagement between the committee members and elected officials. Thank you so much. Will County early voting is also sponsored by City of Naperville at the Department of Public Works at Fort Hill and Jefferson starting October 19th through November 2nd. So everybody can see that too. Another way where you can vote. Now we're going to go into questions. Do I have any questions from social media right now? Really quick. Okay, we have a question right here. If we can actually get the representatives on screen, the candidates on screen, please, for representatives and Senate. Excellent. Okay, so we just had a question. Can I see that question pop up again, please? I want to make sure we get that. Excellent, thank you. From Charles Muhammad, thank you so much, Charles. The question is, what's the best way to get involved with protecting our waterways and other natural resources from deregulation? Is there anybody who would like to take that question?
I'll jump in real quick.
I would as well.
Obviously, reaching out to your representatives. Go ahead, Grant. I'll let you go. Yeah, I know you're not on the screen. I'll let you go.
Sorry. Thank you, Representative Batnick. And sorry, I was trying to wave my hand and realized that my camera still isn't working. So one of the ways you can get involved is through forums like this, but it's also reach out to your legislator or representative directly. Most of us have an open door policy, and we'd love to hear from constituents. I'm proud to report that I have a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Illinois Environmental Council of an A rating. I'm the only Republican to have that. Being an active environmentalist is important to me because it's important to you. I grew up in this town, and we always protected our environment, whether we turned, what used to be basically a landfill into the Riverwalk in downtown. But we're working on legislation to protect coal ash, our waterways, things like that. So another way to get involved is to join the Sierra Club. There are clubs out there that are specific. They're the Naperville Environmental Group here in town. Get involved with them, and then they communicate their concerns about the environment to us. But as a good legislator, it's my job to make sure that our doors are always open. Our phones, we answer them. So whatever we can do to be of assistance, reach out to us, email, whatever works. But I'm proud to be the only A-rated Republican when it comes to the environment.
Thank you. Mr. Batnick, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I probably should have gone first because he said a lot of what I was going to say, but I'll just add, getting involved in advocating is obviously a big deal. One thing that I think is underreported right now and is really a big issue is microplastics in water. I was the chief co-sponsor of a bill to study microplastics in water, and it's really something that just is going throughout our entire ecosystem. So there is, on both sides of the aisle, there is a recognition of these sorts of issues, and I certainly appreciate the question. And obviously, since I was the chief sponsor of that bill, take it serious.
Yes,
Can I add a few words? What's said makes a lot of sense. I think we also need to always approach these problems from all sides. At Morningstar, what we do is we've helped millions of investors decarbonize their portfolios, move to greener, more sustainable investments. These are things that we can do at the state level with state funds. These are things that individuals can do. If you are fortunate enough to have an investment portfolio, you can also direct your money that way. And because we know that when investors speak with their money, that companies listen, and you can start making a difference that way. There's so much that we can do with our state resources to just be more to go for a more environmentally sound future. And this is one of the ways through our investments to just dramatically scale up our influence as a state and as investors. And we've had so many people who have made these shifts with their portfolios, and at the same time they have earned some of the best returns in the market. And so I think we need to pursue more policies just like that combine these environmental goals with also these with ones that make financial sense like this, and kind of approach the problem and many different problems from many different sides.
Yes, Ms. Capel.
Yeah. So along with that, one thing for me, I think as an educator, it's like in being over the Joliet Township School Board, it's like, I think education has a lot to do with making people even aware of, the difficulties that we face. To me, I think making sure our clubs, our after school clubs, and our teachers are putting that into our curriculum so that they know what's going on. The Sierra Club also, that is a great organization that really makes people aware of that. We're trying to bring more people together for that. But I think for me, the best way is to get involved, write letters, look at things on social media, and to make people more aware of that as well. So that I think the more people that get involved, I think the better. So.
Thank you. Is there another question? Great. We have a question from Mr. Alam. For both candidates for the 41st Representative District, why are Illinois property taxes so high, and what can you do to reduce them? Who would like to take that first? Go ahead.
I can start. I'm on the Naperville 203 school board, and so 75% of your property taxes, as probably we all know, go to education, go to our schools, and as a school board member, that is we hear about the need to provide relief for property taxes. Very regularly as a candidate for 41st district. That's one of the things that people talk to me about constantly. And so I am absolutely committed to finding ways to relieve some of those burdens. For this group, one of the things that you'll see on your ballot when you go to vote, it will be the graduated tax. In my opinion, that's one of the ways that we can start relieving some of that burden. That will help, start really providing funding to schools at a state level, and start helping take away some of that local property tax burden. At the same time, the Naperville 203 School Board, one of the resolutions that we passed, that we worked with the Illinois State Board of or the Illinois Associated School Board to do, was to provide some changes to the property tax extension levy limit. The way that it's set up, it's kind of a strange process where basically school districts are always incentivized to ask for the maximum PTEL. And so, what we were trying to do as a school district was to take away that kind of that strange incentive system, so that school districts could, basically not always ask for that maximum extension, and not get punished for it in the future. And so, that's one of the things that, if I were so fortunate to win the seat, that I would want to work on right away to start giving that relief to our district.
Thank you for that question. Your property taxes are so high because school board members like Janet Yang Rohr continue to raise them year after year. She's been on the school board for 4 years. She's raised property taxes 3 of those years. That makes up about 75% of your property tax bill in Naperville. She answered that question by saying she's going to increase taxes even higher on income, which is not the solution that Illinois needs. We already live in one of the highest tax states in the union, and to simply say that we need to raise taxes even higher is illogical. As a former member of the Naperville City Council, I lowered taxes 9 out of 10 years. The one year that Ms. Yang Rohr is so quick to point out in her mailers that I raised taxes, it was to make sure that our roads were properly maintained. So our property taxes are so high because we have irresponsible board members that can do nothing but raise taxes. As your legislator in Springfield, I have been working hard for property tax relief, whether that is how the state budgets, or more importantly, what we can do to stop things like unfunded mandates. Springfield is notorious for throwing things at the school district and then not finding a way to fund them. The one bill that Janet brought up was the PTEL bill. Well, I'm the chief sponsor of that bill in the Illinois House. It passed out of the Senate, and then unfortunately, due to COVID, we were not able to fully address that bill. But that is a bill that would allow school districts a little bit more flexibility in their ability to reduce taxes. But property taxes are so high because school board members like Janet Yang Rohr continue to raise them.
If I could just clarify one point, when Representative Worley talked about raising property taxes, he was, I think probably a lot of us know math and accounting. He was just showing, one side of the equation. The other side of the equation that I think is very important for the group to understand is that when that we also bought back millions of dollars of bonds, and we saved taxpayers tens of millions of dollars in interest payments. And so those were, unfortunately, we didn't put that on your property tax bill so that you could see specifically the money we were saving. And, Representative Worley has pointed that out. And so I think for the school board, that is something that in the future we should maybe take some time to actually show taxpayers all the tens of millions of dollars that we have saved for them.
So what we do, if I may, what we do see on our property tax bill is
So I'm just going to.
an ever increasing property tax bill. That's what residents see. Is they see dollars on their property
So,
tax bill.
Mr. Worley, I'm just going to, and I don't want you to think you have a disadvantage because you're not on camera, because you definitely are being heard. But I do want to remind the candidates that this is not a debate. This is a candidate forum with Q&A. Thank you for both answering the question. I'm going to move on to the next question, please. Okay, the next question is from Ms. Atia Mobeen-Uddin. I would like to know the candidates' positions on police reform and also on what they will do to help provide health care to the most vulnerable populations. I can start with Ms. Capel.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think in terms of police reform, I think we can all agree that there are probably some changes that need to be made to how our police operate, because they're not social workers. And I think there's a lot of social, emotional, and mental health issues that need to be addressed probably more in the schools, and even before they even get to the place where we're starting to have our police officers kind of have to deal with that. And I think one of the things that's been at least helpful, at least at the school educational level, that I'm very proud of, that I've been through as a teacher in the school district that I taught in, and also as a board member at Joliet Township High School, is something called implicit bias training. And I think, all that is just helping us to understand, stepping outside of our own worldview of how we view the world and trying to look at other people's perspectives. And I think that that's something that we can do also in terms of kind of working towards that. And I think, again, everyone needs to be held, if you're getting paid by taxpayer dollars, you need to be held to a higher standard. So, everyone needs to be held to a higher standard when they're getting paid by taxpayer dollars, and we can look at that. But I think really more than anything, we just need to continue to listen and have leadership on this, and try to, listen. I think leadership takes being able to kind of come together and form solutions to that. Was I supposed to talk about healthcare too? Because I can talk about that as well.
What you will do to help provide healthcare in Illinois for the most vulnerable populations. I guess the question is how you'll identify them, and then what you think should be done at the state level.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think the whole idea of making sure that we cover pre-existing conditions, that stays in healthcare. I think also, I think costs of medicine and pharmaceuticals are high, so we can kind of look at how those are managed with pharmaceutical managers. But I also, when I go and talk to voters, what I'm finding, and this was something new, is that a lot of our seniors are struggling in terms of how they have to pay for their supplemental coverage. Some are better than others, but as they stay on a fixed income and those start to go up, healthcare starts to become something that's less affordable as they get older. And so kind of looking at that and taking a holistic view on how we can help our seniors with that is another way.
Thank you. Mr. Batnick?
Yeah, thank you for that. A couple things. I'll start with the police reform. When the situation happened in Minnesota, I had a lot of constituents emailing me the 8 Can't Wait program, eight police reforms that can't wait. And what's interesting, what a lot of people don't realize, is we actually passed police reform a couple of years ago in Illinois that included a ban on chokehold. It made which I think Congresswoman Underwood talked about, body cams. It actually made it legal for police to wear body cams. So there was actually a lot of work that's been done in Illinois. And as time has gone by, I think people are realizing that we did a lot of work. So maybe Illinois is a little bit ahead of the curve versus other states. I supported that bill, so I just want to make it clear that I supported that bill. I think what Ms. Capel mentioned as well is something that I've talked about, is we ask a lot of our police, and the guy that's going to break up a fight at a bar isn't necessarily the guy that's going to negotiate, de-escalate a something like a social worker can. So I think there's pretty strong consensus across the board that you need maybe a little bit more of a targeted approach. Police officers are spread really thin right now. They're asked to do everything. They're dealing with kids, they're dealing with adults, they're dealing with guns, they're dealing with drugs, they're dealing with violence, they're dealing with mental health, which is a huge issue. And through the COVID situation, we had boy, twice a week with a couple of my departments updates on what's happening with domestic violence and drug overdoses and all that other stuff. So they're stretched incredibly. They're thin. Defunding the police is a horrible idea. They need help. They need more support more than anything else. To the healthcare situation, I just want to make something clear. I have not met a single politician at the state or national level that doesn't want to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered. Everybody is for that. And I just want to make that clear. I've certainly worked on bills for lowering costs of healthcare. We have created a situation where there's not a lot of options in the state of Illinois for healthcare coverage. And I know a lot of people that aren't as fortunate enough to have healthcare through work, that they have to pay exorbitant amounts. It's kind of that little small business guy in the middle. The big companies have access to stuff that they don't have, and then a lot of people have it through work. And then you have people in that middle zone. And I have a bill to try and bring what a lot of other states have to those people so that they can lower their costs. I worked with Representative Gazzardi, and I was hoping to do something before session basically was canceled this year regarding the rapid increase in drug prices. There's absolutely no reason for somebody to be able to take a drug price and have 1,000% increases. That just doesn't happen with any other product. So that we can do some stuff at the state level. A lot of that needs to happen at the national level. But that's kind of a potpourri on that particular issue, and happy to give maybe somebody else a little bit more time on that, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the horrific murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Laquan McDonald, and too many other Black men and women across our country, they just make it clear that we do have a problem, and it's clear that we do need to reform the police system, and that we need to do it statewide. We need to make sure that police across the state and the nation are truly trained in things like de-escalation and the use of force as a last resort. And we need to make sure that when there are bad actors, that they're held accountable. We need to make sure that we approach these injustices from all sides, because the truth is, our Black and brown and other communities of color just bear too much of the burden of these injustices. And so much of what we're fighting for on this campaign, it seeks to address these injustices, and that includes making sure the most vulnerable among us have health insurance. That includes, for example, supporting the All Kids program. This is a program that has 1.6 million kids in poverty in Illinois, and gives them insurance. It is a program that our current representative, Grant Worley, voted against. And, so it's, again, we are very diametrically opposed on so many of these issues on healthcare and healthcare coverage. And, Representative Batnick, I think, he talked about protecting people from pre-existing conditions. I don't know how he voted, but I know how my representative voted, and he voted to not protect us from those, from protecting us from insurance companies kicking us off their insurance programs for pre-existing conditions.
Mr. Worley?
Thank you. So Illinois is a leader, and there's much we can still do to improve in police reforms, and a lot of that stemmed from what we are doing here in Naperville. Naperville has worked collaboratively with many communities over decades, quite honestly, and above-the-shoulder holds have been something that Naperville hasn't done for quite some time. We've had training for de-escalation within our police department that we instituted that when I was on city council. We have expansive training in mental health issues and recognition and how to deal with that. We've worked with organizations like Little Friends and Ray Graham with law enforcement and our first responders. So when they interact with somebody with autism, they know how to better handle that situation. And it is those types of things here, the values of Naperville, that I have taken down to Springfield to make our state a better place. A couple of bills that are important to address this is one that's called the Bad Cop Bill. This is a piece of legislation that's been filed multiple times. The Democrat majority refuses to move this bill, and we don't know why. What this bill does is if you're a law enforcement person and you lose your job for cause, you cannot go to just a different department and get hired. You're a bad cop. You did something wrong. You were terminated for cause. You shouldn't just be able to go to a different department and get another job. We need to root those bad apples out. Good cops don't like bad cops just as much as everybody else doesn't like bad cops. Another one is body cameras. This is something that we are seriously looking at, and we should. The concern there is how to pay for them. A community like Naperville, we can probably find a way to make it happen. But some of your lower income communities where, quite honestly, we would probably need more body cameras. We need to find a way to fund that, to just make sure, just say go forth and do that without the proper funding is a problem. One of the bills that I was the chief sponsor on in the House, and I'm glad it was signed into law, is one that would allow social workers to, once they're within a semester of getting their degree in social work, to apply. Our state bureaucracy is so slow in getting them their license that they were literally graduating and sitting on the sidelines, unable to practice their craft, a craft that Illinois needs more of, social work. So this would allow them to sort of parallel, finish up their degree and get their license once they completed their education. When it comes to healthcare, there isn't anyone, I think Representative Batnick said it, there isn't any elected official that doesn't want to continue to cover pre-existing conditions. One of the things that we need to do to make sure that the vulnerable amongst us, whether that's low income or those with intellectual developmentally disabled or anyone that is just vulnerable in population or senior citizens, is we need to have a budget that reflects our priorities. Right now, our budget is fraught with waste. We see corruption going on. You cannot tell me that there's not a corruption tax buried in that. We need to root that. We need to root out Madigan's ghost payrolling and get rid of that and prioritize how we treat the most vulnerable from a budget process, including healthcare for them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Worley. Now I'm going to have Brother Abadi come on screen.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and good evening. On behalf of ICN Islamic Center of Naperville Community and the Civic Engagement Committee, I would like to thank the candidates, Bill Foster, Lauren, Meg Capel, Mark Batnick, Janet Grant, for taking out the time for their busy schedule to participate in our forum and allow us to better understand their policies and goals impacting the ICN community. I would like to thank the community at large for joining this session and engaging in critical dialogue to understand the electorate positions of the candidates. As well, as we all get ready to cast our vote in one of our most consequential elections of our lifetime, this engagement allows the community to be better served, push for the civic engagement, allow for our voices to be heard, and maintain good relations. I would like to thank our ICN civic partners, the Muslim Coalition, Sister Maria is the MC, and CIOGC, as well as ICN's Civic Engagement Committee. Great team I have. Ayman, Ashwaq, Shafiq, Shoaib, for organizing the informative event considering the unusual circumstance due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, I would like to thank the ICN board for their support of the civic engagement programs of our community. And thank you so much. Sister Maria, is there? With that, alhamdulillah, we come to a conclusion of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.